part 3 of our Adult Ministries webinar series with digital strategist, Mrs. Jamie Dahm. We're looking at digital discipleship and evangelism, but with a focus on best practices for digital ministry sharing in this trying time. And Sister Jamie Dahm is really hitting the mark. Tonight's topic is the role of engagers and digital disciples. I'm J. Alfred Johnson II, your Director of Adult Ministries for the North American Division. First, let's bathe tonight's session in prayer. Oh Lord, we thank you so very much for bringing Sister Jamie Dahm to us, for sharing her with us. And we beg that you would please be with us. We want to grasp everything that the Holy Ghost has to offer through us so that we can become more effective digital disciples. Guide us and direct us. Let your spirit be upon Mrs. Dahm and the entire audience tonight. This is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to present to you my friend, Mrs. Jamie Dahm, digital strategist. Jamie?
Thank you so much for inviting me back here tonight. Right now, I can hear a little bit of feedback. So, okay, now it's gone away. Thank you so much for inviting me back here tonight. This is my favorite topic of the first 4 parts of this section. We are going to talk about engagers and how they are the front lines of the digital discipleship and evangelism model, and how they can literally save lives. Now, that sounds like an oversell, but it's not. So without further ado, let's dig right into the presentation and we'll get started because we have a lot to cover tonight. Now, as always, please check in. Tell us where you are watching from. It's really incredible to see how we have a global audience and a global interest in digital discipleship and evangelism, because no matter where you are, if you're online, you have influence and you can reach others. So as you're tuning in tonight, if you have questions, please comment on YouTube, comment on Facebook. We'll get to those questions. If you have questions about the previous sessions, feel free to also ask about those topics as well. And if you're just joining us for the first time tonight, we'll have the URL at the end of the presentation, but you can visit the Adult Ministries website to actually watch the previous 2 videos to get caught up before our next session in 2 weeks. So tonight we're talking about engagers. Now, as I said before, these guys are the front lines of mission. They are a mechanism for community care. And I firmly believe that the church should be the leader in what I call community or people care, because every opportunity we have to connect is an opportunity to advance the kingdom of God and improve the well-being of others. Because remember, we are seeking to follow the model that Jesus set forth. And what did Jesus do? He attended to the spiritual, the physical, the mental needs first, the felt needs of the people who came to him. Then he bid them come and follow. So we've been going about missions online backwards. We've been using it to only promote upcoming events and to promote people to follow us, when we could be using it as a powerful mechanism to listen to the needs of the community and address those felt needs. And so we must not waste our digital influence. We have this opportunity to minister to people 24/7 every day of the week, because remember, church and our community is not a building. It is a people, and God's kingdom is 24/7. So we can enhance and cultivate the relationships that we have with people within our church, but also our broader community in a way that is incredibly powerful and will help us, change our churches to be centers for positive influences in the communities where we find ourselves. So very exciting. And why is this needed? This is needed because, and I love this quote by David Augsburg, is being listened to is so close to being loved that most people don't know the difference. So this means we can use our online influence to listen to people, to hear what they have to say, to understand their felt needs, because people share an overwhelming amount of information online, and we have access. We can connect to each other through text, through messaging, through social media, through email. We have an opportunity to enhance our relationships through these powerful tools of connectivity. Now, here's what's interesting, and this is why I say this role as part of the digital discipleship and evangelism model can actually save lives. So this is a really interesting chart from the Florida Hospital Center for Community Health. They found that the 8 root causes of the 10 leading causes of death are things like external and internal stress, meaningless existence. If you know that you are created in the image of God and that you have a purpose and God has a plan for you, you do not have a meaningless existence, nor do you have low self-esteem or self-worth. Things like economic disparity, loneliness, social isolation, lack of information or education, these are all services the church can provide. People also go through, especially right now with COVID, we have loneliness, isolation, we have anger, we have frustration. All of this is something that we can help people with through our messages of hope and wholeness, through this powerful truths that we have. Because when I look at these 8 root causes of the 10 leading causes of death, I see 8 ways that the church body can be improving the well-being of our community, the way that we can attend to those emotional, to those felt needs, to those physical felt needs of people, to meet them where they are, to open the door for continual ministry and to sharing the gospel. Now, there's actually a real life example of this, which is in a sense a little personal for me, and I'll get into that in a moment. But the real life example of potential impact that this kind of idea that we have is in the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. I personally believe the best part of the book is actually the beginning of the book, but he begins the book with the story of an Italian immigrant town in Pennsylvania. This town is made up entirely of Italians from Roseto, Italy. Now, this was very common around the turn of 1900s. Around that time, a lot of Italians came. Actually, entire communities would almost uproot, come here, and then live in isolated communities because oftentimes we weren't allowed to mix and mingle with the general population due to prejudice and stuff like that. And so my mother's side of the family is actually Sicilian. And in this case, you had a community that was basically transplanted from Italy. They were blue collar workers, and I think they were miners, they were tradesmen, which was also very common. My family were coal miners and farmers. These people smoked heavily. 41% of their calories came from fat, and many struggled with obesity. Yet they were able to avoid the main causes of death. So literally, they led what we would typically consider unhealthy lives, which honestly, as an Italian American, I can tell you this is quite common because of the way we eat in this country and just the heaviness of the foods and the products in this country. We eat a lot more dairy, we eat a lot more meat than in mainland Italy. And so what they found is there was no suicide, no alcoholism, no drug addiction, very little economic disparity. People were essentially dying of old age. No one had a heart attack under 55. And the overall rate from all causes of death was 30 to 35% lower than expected. Now, here's the interesting thing. I can tell you that is very unusual. So growing up in an Italian community, we were just told that Italians had bad hearts, that were prone to heart attacks, were prone to strokes, and we see it all the time. Last year, there was, he's a man now, obviously, but a guy I actually grew up with, straight from Sicily, and he seemed perfectly healthy, wasn't overweight, died of like a massive stroke at age 38. It kind of, shocked everyone, but at the same time, it's not unexpected. It's not unheard of in our communities. And so I just say that to stress that this is unusual. And so an extensive study was actually done of this community, and the secret wasn't diet, exercise, genes, or location, because I can tell you that most Italians don't have these wonderful genes. Extended family elsewhere did not enjoy the same rates of low disease. So what was it? What was it that made the difference? And this is where, Ellen White and other people talk about the mind-body connection, and we've lost that in modern day Western medicine. But what they did is they looked at health then in terms of a community. So they went beyond the individual because they couldn't figure out what the difference was. And so they went to actually the social structure of the community. And what they found was that 3 generations lived under one roof. People stopped on the street. They talked. They knew each other. Grandparents were respected. They were unified through church and civic engagement. Basically, everybody lived together and worshiped together and built a community together. There was this massive support system between family and neighbors and everything. And they were actually healthy because the world they had created for themselves in this tiny little mountain town of Pennsylvania. So essentially, they had transported that communal way of living, embodied by what we call the Pisani or the village or the peasant culture of Italy, to their new home. And so they defied their diet, they defied their way of living, and they defied their genetics. And it was really based on their community. And so this is important. And this idea is at the crux of what the engagers can do and what we can do as community builders using modern digital tools and technologies, because there's a massive void that we have to fill. So to live out our faith and our mission in the modern world, we actually have to be counterculture. I'm sure no one will disagree that our family structure and our community structure has broken down. One of the I think actually for me, one of the pleasant things with COVID is that I've actually gotten to learn and know and build relationships with my neighbors. Before, life was too busy, we were too fragmented. Now I'm actually getting to know them, but we can strive through our church community to build healthy communities. I believe that the church, with some effort, can rebuild what has been lost to meet the needs of the people. Because while the world has changed in so many ways, people fundamentally have not. We need each other. And so this is where I think the engagers, these are your community builders. These are your bridge builders. These are the people who are seeking those who need help, who need support, who are using their influence. Because remember, it doesn't matter whether you have 4 or 40,000 followers. If you are using that influence to improve the well-being of another, you are an engager. And you can do this as part of a church, or you can do this as an individual. And we're going to talk about, different aspects of that. So let's fast forward to a little bit of a modern example that we have from women's ministries at the North American Division. Gorgeous to God is a teen ministry dedicated to the difficult issues that young girls face. And actually the age has expanded a little bit, but the content is relevant and it's willing to tackle the kind of things that typically the church isn't comfortable talking about. And this is whenever we interview or I talk to young people, I hear this over and over again, that they have frustration with the church. It doesn't feel relevant because we're not there to answer the questions they're actually asking and to deal in practical ways with the challenges that they face every day. And so this ministry is seeking to counteract that. And so the last time I checked, they have over 45,000 followers, millions of impressions, and just hundreds of thousands of video views. But the reality is, in a ministry like this, which I think can be replicated on many different levels, the value is not in the number of videos viewed. It's in meeting a very real need. So oftentimes we get dazzled by vanity metrics, like, oh, we have so many views or we have so many of this. The number of views doesn't matter. What matters is if you impact someone's life. So we are filling this void because a lot of teens have challenges today. I certainly didn't have growing up in the 90s or the 80s. They have a different world in the digital age. And so what we did is we created a confidential Q&A section where girls can write in anonymously about anything without judgment that they're struggling with, and they actually get answered by a Christian counselor who can show them compassion, offer sound judgment. Again, sound advice without judgment. And we get, Erica Jones is the director of this, but, she gets comments from girls who are, suicidal, they're dependent on alcohol, they're dealing with rape, they're dealing with incest, they're dealing with abuse, they're dealing with depression, anxiety, just a myriad of things. And they don't feel like they have somebody that they can speak to face in their life. And so they reach out to Gorgeous to God, and they can connect through a partnership that she developed with a Christian counselor to help them with these issues. It's one of the top pages visited on the website. After we launched, we actually ended up reconfiguring the website. And so the content ended up being driven by the questions girls were asking. And so what we started out is getting like 3 to 8 messages per week. I think she's up to about 15 messages this week. And what we're doing is we're creating a support system and a resource for these girls, because they don't feel like they have somebody in the church they can speak to, or somebody in their family they can speak to. And so what I think is really amazing is when we see the testimonies, because what we're doing is the content is driven by the actual questions that people are asking. So somebody writes in a question, it might be anonymous, it might not, but we post the answers anonymously on the blog, and we get feedback like this, like it's as if the question response was written for me, because what we have found is if one person asks a question, there's probably thousands of others struggling with the same issue, and the response to the one girl can actually have a great impact on many, many others. And, of course, this other girl says, it's almost as if you knew my life exactly. So this is an exciting ministry. And it got us thinking is, what if every church offered a safe place to ask without judgment? What if every Christian was a safe person to go to ask questions without judgment? So oftentimes, as Christians, we kind of wall ourselves into a protective bubble, and we might not actually know how to respond to the harshness of the realities that a lot of people are facing with. And I've seen it. I've seen people, in social settings where they've confessed something or they've told something that happened to them, and people don't mean to, but they actually like physically repel a little bit because we just don't know how to face it. And so we have to start learning to kind of lean in and help these people and be there for these people in a practical way. And too often we're guilty of responding in a way that feels like it's coming from a position of moral superiority. So what we're doing with Gorgeous to God, and what I hope every church can do, is that we can become a place where people can share without fear of condemnation, that we actually listen more than we talk. Because remember, listening is so close to being loved that most people don't know the difference. Sometimes we just need to listen. That when we give advice, it comes from love, it comes from understanding, it comes from compassion. And when we do this, when we meet people where they are with the issue they're actually struggling with truth and love, and being the reaching arms of Jesus Christ, the church and our faith becomes relevant in a world where they're struggling with faith being relevant. And it is, of course, it's a privilege, it's a great responsibility when people come to us for answers, and we should give them a safe place to land. And I'm really excited to say that actually I'm working with a church down in Florida to launch a program very similar to this, where they're actually going to start doing a sort of a candid conversation series, where every week they're going to take questions from the community and the pastors are going to tackle them in a real and candid way. There's a interactive component of the videos, and then they also have an engagement team set up and prepared for people who are requesting prayer, who have questions, who want Bible studies, so they're trying to implement all three parts of the digital discipleship and evangelism model. But the section of it that we work the most on is this engagement section. So what about in real life? So what we have here is actually an example of my personal life of something a friend posted that was completely outside her nature. And what I'm hoping with this is to get us each to challenge how we spend our time online and how we pay attention to what others are posting. Because oftentimes we go online to share, or to consume, or to be entertained, or to waste the time. But what if we went online to actually pay attention? This idea of how many prayers can be answered if we simply pay attention. What if our churches, like just even within our own church community, our memberships, started to pay attention for cries for help within our own church bodies? We can do this even as individuals. There's a famous example where there's that actor, I think his name was Peter Davidson from SNL, and he posted something on Twitter like, I don't really want to live on this earth anymore. I don't want to be on this earth anymore. And of course, he's famous. So this alarming message caused a spur of other messages, calls, people showing up to check on him and to encourage him. But here's the thing, not everybody is famous. Not everybody has millions of followers to analyze every comment online, but they are no less valuable to God. So instead of the world setting the example of this kind of community care. The church should be setting this example in every church body. It is not uncommon for people to post a cry for help online. If we use our sphere of digital influence as a means to stay connected to our community, to our friends, to anybody we come in contact, we can be that person who can be there when someone posts a cry of help. And we can take action, and we can, whenever we notice even just changes in behavior, we can ask questions. There's so much power in even just asking someone, are you okay? You never know what the response is going to be. But these two messages, for example, are two actual Instagram posts from a friend of mine who, as I said before, she always posts her Instagram best. So this tipped me and several other people off that something was very wrong. And so we were able to reach out to her in a timely manner. And she got messages from, I think, Australia, Austria, because, we're a global community. She got messages from all over. People were calling her. Nobody could actually show up because we were all far away. But we were checking on here. We were asking those questions and figuring out how to respond, because this was a cry for help, because she would never post anything like this. This is completely outside of her character. And so this is essentially what we did. And one of our friends is actually a professional counselor. And so we came up with these steps. Like, we use this as an example to kind of come up with a checkbox of things that you can do to help when you're investing in your relationships online, and help you to recognize warning signs and knowing how to respond. Because it's one thing to recognize, but how do you respond in a meaningful way? So our church communities can extend beyond the building by being a support system outside of church and online. So if a church member cries for help online, are we paying attention? Do they get a response? Do they know that their church community actually cares for them? And then once we get that right, then we can expand into the broader community. We should work to extend the church experience beyond those confines of time and space in the building to an involved community that provides 24/7 support to not only its members, but our broader context. We are truly our brothers and our sisters keepers. So to do that, we must listen and take time in a busy world. We must not go online to simply be consumers, to be entertained, to waste time, or to put out what we're doing in our life. We must go online intentionally. And, throughout the series, you're always going to hear me say the word intentional. And we can make a meaningful and measurable difference in everyone's life. We can touch every community with this ministry of healing through community building. So we must cultivate, churches and individuals must cultivate and nurture healthy communities within our churches, both analog and digital, and thereby better positioning ourselves to provide the same network of support to the wider community. So what did we do? Well, we paid attention. We saw that something was wrong. We noticed this change in behavior. We texted each other, but the first thing we did is we took action. We reached out to her. She got text messages, calls, in person. I think someone did show up in person, actually. I think her sister did. Email, etc. We asked questions. We didn't assume. We didn't fill in the blanks for ourselves. We ask questions. We assess the situation. We determine the causes and factors. And we listened for as long as it takes. We encourage and we uplift. That post actually that I have here was the very next thing that she posted, and I sent that to her. Once we figured out what was going on, we prayed with her. We prayed for her. And we asked her what we could do to help. And to not, mask her identity, I'll just say this. She was in a very bad relationship situation that she had to be helped out of. And so we followed up week after week. We did whatever we needed to do to help her continue to assess the situation, and we repeated as long as necessary. And it takes time, and it takes intention. It takes, not just following up just once. It's continually. And here's the thing though, yes, she's a close friend of mine, and she had been hiding the secret from us, but it doesn't matter even if it's just a member of your church. Pay attention, take action. People are all valuable in God's eyes, and we just have to be very intentional. So a lot of people ask, okay, but practically, how does community building work in the digital space? And not to be, but it actually works much the same way as in the physical world. So I think I talked about in a previous presentation how for some reason, as Christians, we've siloed sort of our analog world and our digital world, and our relationships are that way, and our relationship with God is siloed between analog and digital. And the reality is, it is all one continuous experience. So what this means is, just like expert evangelists have told me, the most effective form of evangelism is friendship evangelism. So your digital tools just simply allow us to scale up friendship evangelism. It allows us to stay in touch with people's day to day. It allows us to ask questions. It allows us to text. It allows us to call. It allows us to engage with them whenever and as much as necessary. That is something unique, we've had such this huge communication boom. Previously, like, you had to write letters, or you had to call, and there was no voice message. We have never been connected like we've been connected before in the history of our world, but we're not using it to the fullest of what it can be done. But this really does take paying attention and getting out of our comfort zone and being intentional with how we interact with people and following up in meaningful ways. So this kind of outreach, you can do it as an individual. It can be your own personal ministry. You can pick 5 people in your friends list on your social media platform. You can pray for them, and you can continually monitor them and check in with them and find ways to minister to them. Or as a church, and we'll talk about the different roles in a church, but as a church, we can also do this in a very powerful way as a means of outreach. So it's really friendship. What is friendship? It's getting connected with people through social media, through text, through email, just making sure you're actually able to contact people. Pay attention to what they post online. Take the time to, and we'll dig into this later, to rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. Show interest, ask meaningful questions, invite people through tools to either watch a sermon or participate in a piece of content or attend an event, post-COVID. Take advantage to serve people. When someone posts an expressed need, can you take meaningful action? So a couple of examples of this is, I'm going to use personal examples, but when COVID first happened, I knew a couple people who lost their jobs. Now, my background, of course, is marketing and communications. And so what I did is, I have a skill set. Everybody has a skill set. So I was able to help them with their resumes and their cover letters. And so I offered that just out of kindness, just to say, like, I can help you. That is something I can do to help you in this situation, based on what they were posting, stuff online. And another example is, I know people who have actually cashed out money to people who lost their jobs so they can go buy groceries, so they can pay their rent. Like, we have these powerful digital tools where if somebody needs help or somebody needs a meal or whatever, you can actually have a meal delivered to them. You can send them money virtually. If you have a skill set, which many of you do, you can offer that skill set if it's something that can help them. So, just utilize these tools to think creatively about how you can minister and serve others. Now, this all starts obviously by connecting with the people you meet. So this means your neighbors, the broader community, because the closer we get to people, the more involved we can be in their lives and the more influence we can have. Because for many of us, there were many people that we saw every week at church, and we connected with them then, and we ate fellowship with them, and that was great. But we really didn't take the time to maybe connect with them beyond church. And if anything, COVID has kind of forced us to think about how we can attend to people's needs and how we can actually connect with people throughout the week, and whatever technology you're comfortable with. Like, we have members of our local church who just use phone to call and follow up and stay connected. We have people sending out emails, or people are more connected online. We have a Zoom Bible study every day of the week, and we're doing what we can to create community and to do what we can to kind of bridge that gap from the digital space to the physical space, because what starts in the digital space is not confined to the digital space. So whenever possible, to an in-person experience. So you may connect with somebody who is struggling financially via text, via phone, via social media, but then you can actually have impact in the real world by cash apping them some money, delivering some groceries to them, whatever it is that you can do. Think creatively. You can give people love, let them know you're there, that you're praying for them, you can support them, you can even give them humor. And this is something that I really think the church should embrace. And I firmly believe that COVID is God's way of closing the church doors so that we learn to do church without a building, because the church has been notoriously behind. Because until, you know, recently we were facing the biggest communication shift in the last 500 years, but our communication really hadn't changed in 30. So it's natural for people nowadays to connect first online. More and more people are finding their spouses online. This is something that the church should not shy away from in this change in culture, because the relationships we build online are just as valid as the relationships we have in person. And for many of us that are sort of below that age break, below the 40 age break, I have relationships with people I have never met in person because they're other digital missionaries. They're just colleagues and stuff I work with, and I feel connected with them. I feel just like if I had been meeting them in person. So I understand it's a little bit of a generational difference, but this is the new normal. And so it's something that the church should figure out ways that we can enhance our community online, build relationships online, because what happens in the digital space is real. It is valid. It is a place for people to gather and spend their time, just like the School of Tyrannus. And so when we dig into this idea of 360 community care, and for churches, this simply means having a social media presence is not enough anymore. So to build community, we must be active and responsive online and in person. Because remember that spiritual journey that people are on, our relationships that we're on, we don't see it in silos. We don't experience it in silos. People don't experience their faith online as separate from in person. It's all one part of journey. It's all part of, a multitude of touch points. So your audience, when they engage with you online, when your friends engage with you online, or just your community members engage with you via whatever tool or technology, they expect a response. And, often nowadays we kind of expect a response within a few hours because of the way like big Fortune 500 companies run their customer service, or even just, how we do our own personal business, like with, one business day turnaround response. So we know that strong digital brands create connection, and they take this comprehensive, that holistic approach to the individual experience, to that visitor experience, to that seeker experience, or that member experience. So you want to treat your connections online as if you're talking to them face to face. And our goal for using social media for ministry should always be to understand a need and to fulfill a need, making that tangible impact in the real world. So, and this is something that really is a burden on me, because I can't tell you how many times I log on to other people's social media channels, or I see comments and stuff on posts and below videos, and there's no response. So the question I have for you is, when people pour out their hearts online, are they getting a timely and meaningful response? Because if someone were to approach you in person and they tell you about a struggle or a loss, you'd respond, right? You wouldn't be silent. You wouldn't walk away. You wouldn't say, okay, or, thumbs up, I'll pray for you. That's not a meaningful response. So when people pour their hearts out to you online, are they getting something more than a like, an acknowledgement, anything? So does your church have a team or a plan that is dedicated to responding to people online and providing that network of support? Because I can tell you, I log on to, let's say, a church's Facebook account, because most churches have Facebook accounts. First thing I do is I check your inbox. Friends, if you have not checked your Facebook page's inbox in a while, it should be checked on a regular basis. And I can't tell you how many times I've logged into an account, check the inbox, and you have people sometimes asking kind of basic questions like, what do I wear for church? Or are my children welcome? So sort of those, easy to satisfy barriers to entry that some people might be struggling with, that if someone had just responded to them, they may have actually showed up to the service. So there's a lost opportunity. But then you also get these comments, and I always remember this one very clearly. There was someone who had messaged into a church about how their child had committed suicide, and they were really struggling, and their faith was really struggling, and they were just having a really hard time. And by the time I saw it on this particular church's Facebook page, that message was from like a year and a half ago. And so we had to cross beyond any amount of ability to respond or engage with this woman. And it was, I saw that as a terrible loss because she reached out crying for help, needing support, and got literally zero response. And the thing we have to remember is not everybody is ready to walk through the doors of your church. And right now they might not even be able to. But we can still show them God's love through our care provided online, and how we respond really matters. So you really need to have a plan for your church. So I talked about before how this could be a personal ministry opportunity for either you as an individual, if you want to be a digital disciple, or if you want to kind of work with your church to create teams. So there are 3 teams that you can create. The first one are people dedicated to just connecting with other church members online and responding to their needs and just paying attention. We all have like that member, it's usually an older member of the church who is just so good. Like she's a social butterfly, typically a woman, though I know a few guys, who's a social butterfly, who's kind of like everyone's surrogate mother, like, or whatever. This person could be empowered to really connect with people online and use that as an opportunity to really make sure everybody in the church is being heard and felt, and their needs are being met. You could also have a second group, are people dedicated to responding to comments, questions, and needs directed to the church in the digital space. So these are people that'll have access to your social media accounts. They have the necessary apps on their phone, so they'll get a notification if somebody comments, if somebody sends a direct message, and they can ensure that that person gets a timely response or is referred to someone who can respond, especially if it's like maybe a theological question that's, you know, out of their comfort zone, or a personal ministry question, but making sure that that actually gets attention. And then the third group is training digital disciples in your church. And this can often be young people, but it can be anybody of any generation who intentionally use their digital influence to build relationships with non-members online and look for opportunities to serve. So these are people who are connecting with others with purpose, to use their digital influence to not only share the gospel, but actually minister and to serve others. And we'll talk about what those commitments look like and what that actually looks like in a little bit. The thing to remember, you know, this is not just a job for one person or just the pastor. This is something I believe every single one of us is called to do. We are all called to be the hands and feet of Christ. We're all called to share the gospel, and we can use our influence. Every single one of us has it. If you're online, you have influence. You can use that influence to attend to people's needs. And so we think of evangelism being based on relationships. Our true identity, or our Adventist brand and faith, must go beyond how much we know and the message we have to share. It must be based on how much we care if we are serious about digital evangelism. So remember, an entity's brand is experienced by the people who interact with it, with all those different touch points. So you have to really think holistically about how people are interacting with your church or interacting with your faith, you know, if you're an individual who's just trying to share your faith. So this means we have to change the way we use social media. We have to aim to create conversations. We have to aim to create meaningful community that bridges the gap between digital and the real world. And then we have to be prepared for them in the real world, because remember, all those touch brands work together. Remember, your people's faith, their experience, their interaction with Christians, and our perceptions and our touch points, we don't silo them in real life. My friendships that I have online are my friendships I have with these people in person. And so when we start thinking of our digital presence as an extension of our church, an extension of our faith, an extension of like our personal brand and our church brand, then we realize that we have so much untapped opportunity. And we really have to think of every single one of those touch points, because there should not be a disconnect between how a person is nurtured in the pews and how they are treated online, or vice versa. So, you know, remember, your brand is how your church or your faith is perceived. And so when we create connection and we take this comprehensive approach to the member, to the visitor, to the seeker, to the community member's experience, our online interactions with them should make them want to experience our faith mission in person. So when they come for that on-site experience, whether it's just coming to participate in a food drive or the volunteer or to pick up some toys for their children, or maybe a health clinic you're doing, or whatever it is you're doing, or they're just coming to a church service or something, that it should be a continuation of that positive relationship that you began building with them online, or vice versa. So if somebody has that in-person experience with your church and then reaches out to you online, again, you want that to be a continuation of that positive experience, because your greeters, your hospitality teams are all part of the engager team. Anybody who interacts with others as a Christian is an engager. You know, we have these on-site church ambassadors, and we have these church ambassadors throughout our community. And so the atmosphere that we create is vital to the seeker's experience, and even to our own members' experience. So at this point, I'm going to take a moment just to answer a couple of questions that have come in, and then we're going to go to a quick commercial break. So someone is asking, they're saying the material presenting is relevant. Thank you. And thank you for joining us. I know it's a lot of information, but I really hope you guys take this and run with it. How can I create presentations like the one about the information from Florida Hospital so I can build on that and bring in relevant biblical ideas? In other words, where do I get relevant statistics like the Florida Hospital slide? So the person, this is from Path of Prophecy on YouTube. So I would say, like, this one actually came to me from another gentleman's presentation that was given on health. And so I ended up like taking a picture of it and kind of looking it up and recreating it. So I would just say, look at the connection between community and health. Also, there's a lot of content that, Ellen White writes about in her Ministry of Healing. But I would just say you could probably look up the Florida Hospital research on that. It's from, I believe it's 2016. I looked it up at one point just to confirm some things. It is, public, so you can look it up. But I would just dig into research about how community and health is actually tied together, and just mental well-being. We have so many statistics out there about isolation, and we have statistics about how drug addiction, and I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but I work with the End It Now campaign. And so that talks a lot about how neglect as a child is tied to, drug addiction as an adult, or criminal behavior as an adult, or abuse, or other things. And so there's a lot of information out there. So you can go to reliable sources like the Florida Hospital, or, government research. The CDC has a lot of information. And so when you start digging into the effects of community and health, a lot of it is tied together, and there's some amazing stuff. And then you could tie it into, the Ministry of Healing, and what we know about, what Jesus did. So a comment, it's not a question, but I just want to affirm the comment, and that is, she has been saying that well before COVID, this is Allison Down, that the church needs to stop doing church and start being church. Amen. I firmly believe, the apostolic gospel in the first century took the gospel to foreign lands out of necessity because they were fleeing persecution. I think God is closing the church, and I think he's going to keep the church doors closed until we figure out how to fully commit to this mission field. I was looking at a Forbes article the other day, and of course, everybody has their theories, so I don't know how accurate it is, but they're saying at the current rate of vaccination and, just infection throughout the population, it's going to take at least 7 years to get back to whatever the new normal is going to be. And by then, we're going to be living in a totally different world where telework, telecommunications, all of this is going to be the expectation. This is going to be the normal. And so right now we have an opportunity. What we're deciding to do today, what you as individuals, what you as church leaders, and what you as ministry leaders decide to do today is going to determine the health and the fate of our church 5 to 10 years from now, whether or not we can be relevant in this new world. Yes, and yes, I affirm we need to be more relational and interact with the generations. And this is something too, I've talked about in the previous presentations, how we can not only encourage mentorship down because there's a lot of wisdom, we're building upon biblical principles and we're building upon, these lessons learned by evangelistic giants, but we're now taking it into the digital realm. So there's a lot to be learned from the older generations, but there's also a lot of opportunity for the younger generations to mentor up with these skills and these natural talents that they have because they're digital natives, but they can also teach us just a whole lot about how they view the world, which is so different than how we do. And then someone says, every time I come to this meeting, I feel like I can see the future of the church in the present. I really believe we can do this. I do too. And I'm seeing more and more churches really start to try and embrace and try out these ideas because this is completely new, guys. So by attending this series, you are interacting with completely new ideas. But with that, we're going to go to a commercial break and I'll see you guys in a couple minutes.
The Amazon Echo Dot is a hands-free voice control device that uses far-field voice recognition for voice-activated digital assistants. The North American Division Adult Ministries Department, with the aid of very talented Alexa programmers, has developed an Alexa skill for the Adult Bible Study Guide. This resource for the Echo Dot is in response to today's demanding, fast-paced society, delivering on-demand audio sharing and the Daily Adult Bible Study Guide. As the program develops, there will be more commands and features programmed into the Adult Bible Study Guide Alexa skill. The North American Division Adult Ministries Department is proud to present this innovative tool for Bible study. This skill is now available in the Alexa Skill Catalog on Amazon.com.
Hi, and welcome back. So now we're going to take a little bit of time to dig deeper into this idea of people care, and then we'll also do another quick Q&A. So the point I want to bring out here is that our digital voice may actually be the only opportunity some people have to see Christ's love demonstrated in their lives. And so when I think in the initial presentation, we talked about how 80% of even professed Christians don't regularly attend church. So how are they being spiritually fed? And what about the rest of the population that is unaffiliated, or that growing group of nuns, as they say, the people have no religion, who are questioning, who may consider themselves spiritual? How are they being fed? And so right now, our Advent messages that are so powerful, and I'll say this in the next presentation, we don't have a message problem. We have a distribution problem. We have some of the greatest messages ever. We have the messages of the Bible and Christ's life, death, and sacrificial, his resurrection and his salvation. We have the ministry of healing. We have the voice of prophecy. We have so much to give, to offer hope and wholeness, but we're largely not present in the conversation in a way that's findable for seekers. So how our online community perceive us, and this also puts, a little bit of pressure on each individual. Like, are we all witnesses for Christ in all our spheres of influence? Like, am I a Christian only in person, or am I also a Christian online? Like, do my online contacts know that I am a Christian? So how our online community perceive us actually influences their perception of not only the Adventist church corporately, but God. And I do this all the time. I have one particular person who I have decided to focus on, to pray on. And she is, I wouldn't say she's hostile towards faith, but she just feels that it's very hypocritical. And so I spend a lot of time whenever she posts something, just kind of interacting with her and trying to offer her a different perspective, because I figure my digital voice may be the only opportunity they have to see Christ's love demonstrated in their life, and their perception of what they experience online and in person not only affects how they view the Adventist church, but actually how they view God. So it's not just, is our faith, is our brand of Christianity relevant, but do they understand God and God's love for them? How do they view God the Father? Do they view him as someone who's vindictive and distant, or do they view him as a personal God who's willing to give their own son for his own son for him? And so having said that, our church should be the clear leader in people care. You know, Fortune 500 companies know that customer service is the key to long-term growth, because when loyalty comes, when an organization, when a brand helps people solve problems and address their felt needs, the church should be the leader in helping people solve problems and addressing their felt needs. Um, Remember, about a quarter of people at any given time are in crisis at the moment in North America. And honestly, with COVID, we need new numbers. I'm sure it's like 50% now. We can use these digital tools to understand perceptions and needs in order to determine the most meaningful ways to serve. So here's just some practical tips for digital discipleship and engagement. This, again, you can train people within your church to take on these roles, or you as an individual can do it all on your own. Even if others around you don't catch the vision, you can lead by example, because I know oftentimes there is a lot of, criticism or scrutiny, or there's a disconnect between how we live out our faith online and in person. And I know somebody has a question, so I'm going to get to your question at the end, specifically regarding that. And so to me, the heart of this ties into a biblical concept. And I'm translating this, of course, into the modern world. And that is, we can live out Romans 12:15. I mean, honestly, we can live out everything of this extended quote. And again, this PowerPoint will be made accessible to you. You can download it. But when you see someone online express sadness about a personal life challenge or excitement about something great that has happened, empathize with them. Always lead with empathy, because Romans 12:15 tells us to rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. We can like the post, we can comment, we can send them a personal message to let them know that we're with them on the way, because the same girl that I'm telling you about, that I have a burden for, who's, critical of faith and skeptical. She's also the same girl that in times of crisis, she's very vocal. She posts what's going on in her life. I have called her. I have prayed for her. She has willingly accepted prayer on her behalf. I send her recorded messages, and I continually let her know I'm with her on the way and thinking about her. And I can tell you, for someone like her, actions speak much louder than just words. And so I try to be consistent with my relationship building with anybody I'm trying to witness to. And I'm encouraging you guys to do that too. And it doesn't have to be all public. So a lot of what I do in the digital space is, I see something that someone posts publicly, I may comment on it, but 9 times out of 10, I tend to take it to a direct message. If I have their cell phone number or their text message or something like that, I will try and text them and reach out to them to see what's going on. So, and here's the thing, a lot of people ask me, well, I'm just an individual or a small church or whatever. But the reality is, you don't need big data. You need the power of the people. So we often think of, like individuals or single heroes single-handedly changing the world in a big way, and these big YouTube stars and all that other stuff. But honestly, like a more achievable goal would be groups of people working together to make the world around us in our local community better. To make real impact, we need to start smaller, realizing that big changes in a small community can have a ripple effect, resulting in a much greater effect. So keep in mind, Jesus didn't really use big data, though he probably had it because he's, omniscient, but he probably knew more than we'll ever know. But Jesus, at the end of the day, he spent time with people. He spent time with the community to understand their needs. So this is where you as an individual, or you as, a ministry leader or whoever, whatever influence you have in your local church, maybe you're a pastor, but start training people in your church to be intentional with how they spend their time online, to pay attention to their friends' contact posts, to proactively reach out, and to take action in appropriate and timely ways. Because one of the biggest things I've noticed is that we have to reframe how we view ministry and how we view our time spent online. I actually will oftentimes talk to people and they'll say, oh, well, I already do that. I just wasn't doing it intentionally. So a lot of people without even knowing it are doing ministry. And for some people, they just need it to be legitimized. So if you're in a leadership position, or even if you're an individual, start calling it ministry. There's a lot of people who sit on the sidelines who don't know how they can be involved in ministry, don't know how they can be involved in evangelism. And honestly, engagement and distribution are the two ways that they can be involved. And we'll talk about distribution in the next section. But every individual can use their influence for good. And when you reframe it as legitimate mission work, as legitimate ministry, then that gets people excited and it validates them. And then they start to spend time on it, because people say, well, I have limited time. So, and for many people right now, their ministry has been taken from them. Everybody I know who's in like hospitality, who does all the like in normal engagement stuff that we think of in person, their ministries have been stripped from them by and large, because that, gatherings and stuff are not practical anymore, or they're not able. But this is something, if they're online, they can get re-involved in ministry and they can actually make significant impact in individuals' lives. And so part of it, I know many of you may be dealing with challenges where people aren't on board, but part of it is changing the way we talk about it, and actually recognizing that, not just internally recognizing that this is a legitimate mission field, but externally speaking to it and repeating it and just reinforcing the fact that this is something people can do and it's legitimate ministry. You can even have team meetings and ask people to share like their success stories. So when we talk about, this idea of an empathy first social media strategy and sort of this power of the people, that means we have to redefine our notion of success. So for many people, that might be getting your digital discipleship team together and sharing how many times did you guys share the love of Christ, and actually getting them to think about like, okay, am I sharing, stories on my feed? Am I sharing the gospel? Like, what am I doing? Am I helping people? How many conversations did they start or engage with on social media? Are you painting a more authentic picture of yourself, faith, or church? Are they actually building relationships, or are they just posting their lunch online? There's nothing wrong with posting your lunch, especially if you like include the ingredients for healthy living. That's actually a ministry too. But are you building relationship? Are you connecting with people? Are you using it to foster community and conversation? Do you better understand the needs of those you're connecting with? And have you found meaningful ways to help people? Honestly, I can tell you, when you prayerfully jump into this mission field, you will be amazed at how many opportunities will open up for you to help people. And it's something that is, a lot of the stories can be very personal. I mean, when I share stories, I tend to share them sort of more abstractly and broadly, because I don't want to share someone's personal information. But there's a lot of opportunities, and it'll surprise you what that might look like. It might look like, helping tutor someone's kid in math while they have a big meeting or something, but you're still tutoring them via Zoom. Well, whatever your skill sets are, you have something to offer. Every single member of your church has something to offer, even if it's an older member who just who has FaceTime or can hop on Zoom and read stories to younger members, like little kids or something like that, to keep them occupied while mommy's doing something. Like, whatever it is they can do, they can offer that as legitimate ministry, whether it's buying groceries, whether it's, finding ways to alleviate people's burdens in other ways. And again, just want to reinforce, there's 3 groups people can fit into. This is not more work for the pastor. This is, this is something everyone can do. You can connect with your church members, respond to their needs, get to know them better. You can have a team that always makes sure that whatever comments or questions or direct messages or whatever come in online, that those get answered within a day. That, train disciples who do this as individuals, just trying to improve the well-being of others using their influence. So when we invest the time, you want to be able to be available, and you want to be able to respond promptly and make it easy for people to reach out to you. But you always want to respond in a way that's very human, that's very authentic, that's very transparent. So people want to feel like that human connection. And again, remember, we want to respond not from moral superiority, but from compassion, from empathy. So when you write to someone or when you respond to someone, always imagine how you would talk to them in person. And usually you'll hit the nail on the head when you're responding via email. Answer your inbox. Again, I cannot stress this enough. People should not have to wait more than one business day. And even if you cannot answer their question right away, let's say it's complicated and like, the person who's in charge of answering your inbox isn't a trained theologian and it's a theological question, let them at least know that their message has been received, that you're praying for them, and will have a response or resources for them shortly. For our own personal ministry that my husband and I run, sometimes we get responses that he has to do a lot of research on. We'll respond, let them know that we're going to get back with them, even if he can't get back with them until the weekend, because he also has a day job and sometimes he also preaches. So like this week, for example, he's working on a sermon, so everybody's kind of getting the same message that you'll hear from us over the weekend when they ask their questions. But again, they know that someone's paying attention, that someone will respond, and that they have not gone unheard. So Christ-like care. So you might be asking, well, how do I treat online conversations like real life conversations? Now, some of this might seem pretty straightforward, but it really helps people to sometimes have, that guideline. Again, responding in a meaningful way, doing more than just typing thoughts and prayers. And believe me, I know that you're genuine when you type that, but actions speak louder than words. You have to go beyond that. You can like their comments, you can follow the conversation, actively participate through asking questions, seek to understand their needs, be authentic, transparent, build trust. Because what we're really trying to do is break down that perceived barrier between the individual and the church. So a lot of people feel like they can't really connect with the church, and by that means they don't feel like they can really connect with God. And so when we want to bring them into the fold and into our community, we want to really respond in a human and vulnerable way so that they know that they can reach out to us at any time. These are some tips that you can go through. Again, you can download this presentation, go through it more intently later. But again, it's really just a matter of checking constantly for your messages and responding. If someone on your brand feed or whatever posts something that's offensive, you can delete it immediately. Oftentimes I find that Christians in particular have a hard time deleting or banning someone. If someone is hostile, if someone is abusing you, verbally, or abusing other members of the community in the comment section, it is okay to ban and delete and hide their comments, because you're not going to be able to reason with them online. I've definitely run into situations where, as a ministry, the person behind the screen, the social media manager, unfortunately takes a lot of abuse, and it's okay to protect yourself and protect your community first and foremost, because again, we're trying to create safe places for people to go without condemnation or a mockery. Always talk with your audience, not at them. You want to frame every response with the salvation of others in mind. Even if somebody says something that hurts you, don't delete every negative comment automatically. It might be an opportunity for you to remedy or fix the situation. Oftentimes those are opportunities. If the person is a victim of a crime, we have resources at enditnownorthamerica.org/get-help. And if the person appears suicidal and you're not a trained counselor, I strongly suggest that you direct them to the National Suicide Prevention Center. Now, going back to the idea of creating opportunities to pray and to doing more than the typing thoughts and prayers. I know that before, I got inspired to do this, I really meant it when I typed, thoughts and prayers. But what I found is, by and large, the broader non-Christian community started mocking that. And I realized the source of that mockery was because they want to see the gospel of action. That's what speaks to them, because they don't yet believe in the power of prayer. And so we can pair it with action. I still believe we should pray for them. And some of the ways we can do that is we can create digital groups for prayer. You can host live video sessions and take live prayer requests and pray for people that way. I've seen few people doing that. You can do that through a myriad of different ways. Some people actually will put like a post, and all you have to do is like the post, and the person will pray for you by name and follow up, and they keep lists and stuff, and they'll ask questions. They can message people weekly and just kind of check on the details of what's going on. Because again, we're using those digital tools to do more than just pray for the person on our own or just pray for the person once, but we're using it to continually pray for them and to follow up and build that relationship and let them know that you're with them on the journey. One of the powerful things that I've started doing, which is hard for me because, believe it or not, I'm actually an introvert. And for me, my spiritual life is very, very private, is I've actually started sending recorded prayers to people. So I don't just say, I'll pray for you. Oftentimes I'll ask the person, if they're not a person of faith, is it okay if I pray for you? I've never had anybody say no. And so what I do then is I will record myself petitioning God on their behalf, and I will actually send it to them via either, iPhone Messenger or Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp. You can actually send these recorded prayers. And there's something about that it's more powerful for someone to be able to hear you petitioning God on their behalf, because they might not be in a situation where they can pick up the phone. They might not be in a situation where they even want to talk to somebody else, but they can still hear you praying for them. And it's a lot more meaningful than just simply saying, I'll pray for you. You can certainly create weekly prayer posts, respond to every person individually. And I've even seen people doing prayers via like Snapchat and stuff, because it has a sense of anonymity, because it, erases after a little bit. And then they use their tools to continually follow up. So this idea of growing as digital disciples, so content creation, engagement, and distribution are not limited to the official church brand accounts. So make it a point to reach out to people, particularly young people who are just natural at this kind of stuff, who want to be involved in ministry, and they just need perhaps sometimes a church leader or somebody older just to validate that this is ministry and that they can use their natural inborn talents and skills that they have to do God's work. So let them know that their talents in this area are highly valued if they are not part of your core team. If you can, make them part of the team. But some people just need permission. I can't tell you how many times I've stood up, obviously before COVID, in front of a group of young people and said, I am giving you permission. You don't have to have permission. You don't have to be an official pastor or have an MDiv to do good for others and to share the gospel. You can start doing that on your own. You don't need permission, but they do want a little bit of mentorship to help them realize their talents and passion for this type of personal ministry. Everybody has influence. They're great at texting. They're great at Messenger. They're not so great at email, but their social media platforms, like, they're on point. This is how they communicate. This is how they live their lives. Encourage and inspire them to use it for God's kingdom. Empower them to engage in ministry in a way that makes sense for them. And you will really see them flourish. Now, one of the things I like to say, and this is an idea I actually borrowed from a friend of mine, Dee Casper, who's also sort of a digital evangelist, is you must have a clear purpose for going online. And so what Dee says is treat social media like a post office. So you have a clear purpose. Your behavior at a typical post office is to enter, pick up mail, drop off outgoing mail and or packages. Most people don't hang out all day in a post office, right? That would be strange. So when we go online with a plan, this helps prevent us from getting distracted from our original purpose and mission. So go on social media to drop off some gospel content, to interact with some people, to build those relationships, to pick up some content, connect with people, pray for them, and then leave. Don't move in. Because we've all had that experience where we intend to watch one video online, and 2 hours later, we don't know how the time got away, but we're now an expert in string theory and like cat videos, and we never actually accomplished what we set out to do. This is by the devil's design. He wants us busy. He wants us distracted. He wants us to use social media incorrectly. When at the end of the day, this is a powerful tool for spreading the gospel. Like if we can use the printing press to spread the gospel, we can use social media. We can use digital tools and technologies. But again, he wants us to use it for the wrong reasons. We have to be like laser focused when we go online. And as you notice, there's always these links where you can go and you can read a little bit more. This is just some tips for individual disciples. Again, these are modernized actually from growingfruitfuldisciples.com. And you can actually just go there, or it's in the book as well, but it's basically empowering people to share their faith through their daily life online in a human and authentic way. Invite your online community to join you and to participate in different types of ministry and such. Being humble enough to share the story of what Christ is doing in your life. So this sometimes means, our church or the older generations, and I don't mean this as like a criticism, but we tend to kind of show only perfection. So what I have found to be really powerful is when people are just honestly and authentically sharing their struggles, sharing what God is doing in their life, and doing it in a very human way. Because again, those stories really impact people. That power of the story to get us to cause us to think about something, not tell us what to think, or to cause us to feel and not tell us what to feel. And so that's so powerful. Again, pay attention. We've covered that. Go out of your way to include and uplift friends and followers who may be shunned, ignored, or bullied or whatever online. Just do good in every way possible. You can support your church's ministry by offering your time, your talent, your finances. Reflect the character of Christ in all your digital and personal interactions with others. So the way you treat people online should not be different from the way you treat people in person. And unfortunately, I've seen so many situations where somebody I know and like in person turns into someone else online, and they say things that I know they would never dream of saying to someone in person. So remember, you must be a Christian online. You must reflect Christ at all times, because people truly are paying attention. Pray for guidance wherever God calls you to serve, and to really understand the culture of the platform that you're called to serve. In our Understanding Your Audience presentation, I think that's like part 6. We're going to talk about sort of the cultures and how different cultures come into play, and how we have to think a little bit more complex about what we mean by culture. We have to go beyond just ethnicities and really think about platforms as different countries and age groups and all the different interacting cultures and influences that we have on us. You can ask your digital disciples to make commitments. And so you can actually go through and have them understand how to build God's kingdom by building networks, meeting people's needs, responding mercifully and relevantly, acting compassionately on those who are disadvantaged or at risk, praying for the Holy Spirit, using their influence to share the gospel, being able to actually justify your faith when asked, because people will ask you very public questions when you start sharing your faith online. Can you actually respond? This will help fortify your own faith, because we should all be prepared to give answer to our faith. Share your personal relationship, and again, of course, make it very personal, being humble and transparent. So by living out our mission online and exemplifying the character of Christ, we can create social media ambassadors for the gospel who will share your spiritual content and messages. And through them, we can impact not only our local communities, but the world. Because remember, a good thing spreads, and it can't spread any faster than online. All right. So if you'd like to get the book, of course, we go into all of this in more depth. It's in print and digital versions. You can find information about it at jdim.digital/book. These videos are archived on nadadultministries.org. And it's actually available from Advent Source, but you can also get it on Amazon as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to take, I think time's kind of running out. So I will take a moment to look at the questions real quick, and then if there's time, we'll do another quick commercial break. So someone's asking, yes, someone's just affirming, let us all be mentored as we mentor others. Now someone's asking, what should I do when I want to do something online, but people block the idea because it has to do with online outreach. Are you sharing your presentations with participants or should they buy the book? Yes, I am sharing the presentation. The book obviously goes in much more depth. And so I do encourage people to buy the book. I don't get any money for the book. I was paid to write the book, so that's not why I promote it. But there's a lot more information and resources in the book, so I strongly encourage it. But you can also have the presentation. So I'm not sure what you mean by block the idea. So you're probably talking about like block the idea in a church sense, like your board's probably not on support or whatever. So one of the things that I've done with a few churches is kind of shown them. So I'll give you 2 examples. So with the church that I'm working with down in Florida, we're actually doing a pilot. So it's a limited pilot to show them what could be done. And so we're hoping that that will open up a lot more opportunity once the entire church board and everybody's on board. One of the things I've also noticed is with our own personal ministry, our own personal church, our local church that we go to, really needed to redo its YouTube channel. So when they caught on to what we were doing with Angels in the Glen and how after like just being 6 or 7 months online, we have 280,000 views and like 55,000 hours of watch time. And all it is implementing these certain best practices. That has now opened the door that now we've created a team at our church that we're going to actually completely redo the YouTube channel, cut out the sermons, follow all these best practices. So what I find by and large, when people are hesitant, they need to see it. And so what I think will help some people is, a few months down the line, of course, when I can use Mount Fisgay as a case study, when I can show other case studies. But I have found that data really talks. And so when people are hesitant to kind of change things on their YouTube channel or their social media channel, oftentimes I'll show them data. If you need some examples that are more specific, you can always go to my website at jdim.digital. You can contact me directly, and I can probably give you some data for a specific like case study if you need something to help convince like your church board to allow you to try something online. Because what I'd rather do, is I want people to try stuff online in a way that's going to work, because there's so much writing on this right now. So I'd rather give you more information so that not only can you get them on board to try something cool and different for outreach, but then you also are prepared to do it in a way that it's actually gonna, hit home and actually have impact. So I have found that testimonials work really well when you train a few digital disciples within your church, and then they start maybe using a window or something like that during the church service to share the testimonies. That can be really powerful, because that definitely speaks to an older generation. So anytime that you can show them what happens, what can be done, then that's often, I have found, is the most effective way to change their heart and minds towards something. Hmm. So I think Josu is saying, how can I make my church and its members understand that online is a really big mission field that we can reach? Well, I like Allison's recommendation. You can encourage them to watch the videos. One of the things I've been doing is I have been meeting with certain church boards and doing like a brief presentation, like a 30-minute presentation on digital discipleship and evangelism, just to kind of speak to why it's needed. Yeah, and the impact of what it could be, because I think the reality is, if we don't change, we're going to have a lot less churches 10 years from now, because we have to adapt, we have to change. And the church has always been adapting. It's adapted with the printing press, it's adapted through persecution. And I think if we help encourage our members to see that, I believe God is using COVID, because we really have dropped the ball on digital technologies. So again, this back to the idea of showing them. All right, so let's go to a quick commercial break, and then we'll come back and see if there's any other questions.
The Amazon Echo Dot is a hands-free voice control device that uses far-field voice recognition for voice-activated digital assistants. The North American Division Adult Ministries Department, with the aid of very talented Alexa programmers, has developed an Alexa skill for the Adult Bible Study Guide. This resource for the Echo Dot is in response to today's demanding, fast-paced society, delivering on-demand audio sharing and the daily adult Bible study guide. As the program develops, there will be more commands and features programmed into the Adult Bible Study Guide Alexa skill. The North American Division Adult Ministries Department is proud to present this innovative tool for Bible study. This skill is now available in the Alexa Skill Catalog on Amazon.com.
Hello again. So I just want to affirm something Colette says. She says, God calls, but so many just need their ideas and impulses to be validated, especially if they've never seen a church do ministry like they're thinking. Yeah, a lot of people, and I think it's part of our Christian culture, like they truly just need permission and encouragement. And I have found that when you sort of grant permission, which you didn't really actually need to grant them to do good, they feel so empowered and so equipped. And so for those of you that are really struggling to get people on board, you may want to start with the younger generation and actually start training them to be digital disciples, and then using them as sort of a way of showcasing what could actually be done. Because, like, for example, one of the churches that I'm working with, it's a large church, so they have a lot more flexibility and a lot more budget, but this is something small churches can do too. So like my local church is very tiny. One of the things that you can actually do is, like, they have like a food bank that's attached to their church, and so you have individuals that are reaching out and letting people know on an individual basis with the COVID crisis, using their influence to spread the word about the food and the resources that they're being offered. And again, encouraging people, getting up on the podium and saying, hey guys, this week, we were able to feed this many people, and we heard from this person, Annie, and she was so excited because her friend who's, serving as a digital disciple, let her know about it. So part of it, again, is how we frame it, how we talk about it. So when we start reinforcing these ideas of digital disciples and good work, and that it's ministry and that it's legitimate, more and more people are going to come along, especially for you smaller churches that don't have like the ability to do like a big pilot or a big test. You can start working with the individuals who want to do this type of ministry, who want to share their faith online, because many of us are confined to the house. And so, we're not talking to people or whatever. We reach a much broader audience through our social media channels. So training, equipping, and encouraging people to share their faith any way possible and truly legitimizing it. Because I really do believe that a little encouragement goes a long way. And I think just letting people realize their ideas. So even with our local church, we're going to completely redo the YouTube channel. That wasn't possible until they saw like what we're doing with Angels in the Glen. Then the pastor gave us permission for me to like muck around and completely redo the YouTube channel. So I'm excited once we get going on that. But part of our process there is we've made a team of people who are going to go cut out the archives, cut out the sermons in the archives. We have a young gentleman who's actually talented in video, and he can create graphics and animation. So he's gonna develop sort of like the intro, outro kind of thing. And so we're actually involving as many members as we can, because what I have found is that, of course, many hands make work light, but it also gets them excited because he really wants to use these video, these graphic, these design, this animation talent for the church, but he doesn't have an opportunity to do that unless we let him do it. And so we're working with him and we're involving him as much as possible. So whenever you can involve people, particularly young people, I'm always impressed with the ideas that they come in. I'm always impressed with their ability to also take positive feedback and then also, critical feedback when it comes to like fixing nuances and working with the product and stuff that they're working on. So a little encouragement goes a long way. It's a great opportunity. for membership. So do we have any other questions? I'll take a quick scroll just to make sure I haven't missed anybody. I think I've covered everybody. So I really look, forward to all the upcoming sessions. Thank you for spending the evening with me. Thank you for all of you that have been with me so far in this series. Again, you can go to NAD adult ministries and North American Division.org. You can see the archived videos. They also have it on their YouTube. They also have it on their Facebook. If you've missed the videos before this, you can check them out. Next week, we're going to actually, not next week, but in the next session, which is 2 weeks from now, we're going to talk about the role of the distributors. And this is how, as an individual, you can start sharing the gospel from anywhere in a very effective way. You can engage in something I call digital door knocking, or you as a church leader can leverage your church body to be a powerful reach vehicle for souls. Because even if you have a small church, the average person is connected for about 400 or 500 people online. If people start sharing, you can reach a whole lot more people than you can reach on your own. And so I'm very excited to cover that. I look forward to seeing you guys next time. Remember, ask your questions. If you watch the previous videos and you have questions, bring them to the next session, and I'll see you guys next time.
Thank you, Jamie, for helping us to understand the role of engagers and digital disciples. Our next topic, the role of distributors, is going to be presented in 2 weeks on February 23rd at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. To our audience, we thank you so much for joining with us tonight, and please keep on liking us on Facebook and subscribing to our YouTube channel, remembering to click the bell. Also, thanks for inviting your friends to participate with you next time. Let's seal this evening's webinar with a prayer. Oh Lord Jesus, we thank you so very much for being with us this evening, for speaking to Mrs. Jamie Dom, and for making it clear, for making it plain. We ask that you'd please give each of us the capacity to put these principles into practice. Thank you so very much. And Lord, please be with us all through the time that passes until we meet again on February 23rd at 7 p.m. Thank you, Lord. Be with us, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen. And so, Sister Jamie Dom, thank you so very much. I'm J. Alfred Johnson II, your Adult Ministries Director. We'll look forward to seeing you next time.